one of the great powers of heavyweight history, the former undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Iron Mike Tyson, the current WBA heavyweight champion of the world, introducing Evander, the real deal Holyfield.
It remains the most insane moment in a sport full of them. It was the richest prize fight in human history, between the dirtiest all-time great heavyweight and the most volatile all-time great heavyweight. Though the world will never forget the night Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield, it does forget no outrage occurs in a vacuum.
What am I to do? This is my career. I can't continue getting butted like that.
The twisted tale of how and why Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield goes back decades. Tonight, we look at how the richest heavyweight fight in history went so wrong. It all begins in Brooklyn. Mike grew up in an environment of crime and fear and instability.
Very horrific, very tough, very gruesome kind of place.
He was chubby and picked on as a child. Mike took it until one day the bullying went too far. Mike found peace in his rooftop pigeon coops.
I had horrible pigeons. They couldn't fly much, but they were beautiful.
One day a bully grabs Mike's prize bird and breaks its neck.
Took the bird and popped the neck. He threw him on the floor, and then I shot. That's the first time I ever had a fight.
Something breaks in Mike Tyson. He threw the first punch of his life in righteous anger, beating his bully bloody. He found he enjoyed being feared more than being afraid.
So, you know what I mean? To be able to outsmart somebody was a big thrill.
With no guidance or financial stability at home, the guidance Mike got was from the local hustlers. Mike began a crime spree that saw him end up in state custody.
I went to Tryon Detention for Boys upstate New York.
It was in state custody where Mike is first introduced to Customato.
He said, "You're a good kid, but if you go back to Brooklyn, you're only going to get yourself in trouble."
Cuss grew the street tough into a terror. For Holyfield, on the other hand, life began under a strict discipline in the Old South. He grew up in Georgia, the youngest of a massive family, which meant he was bullied by default. By the time Evander was born, Ms. Holyfield had gotten good at raising children on her own. She knew that idle hands do the devil's work, so she always made sure Evander had something to do. She put him in sports. It started with football, but after a meeting with a local boxing coach, a pre-teen Evander Holyfield finds himself with some headgear on and simple instructions. Go hit that boy in the nose. Soon, Evander spent his afternoons in the gym. The pair meet for the first time while training to make the Olympic team, with Mike set squarely at heavyweight and Evander at 175. Mike wouldn't make the team. Evander was earned a bronze medal after being disqualified for hitting on the break.
This is Holyfield in the semifinals at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles of New Zealand.
Oh, there it goes.
Mike turned pro immediately with Evander hot on his heels. Mike went on a tear through the heavyweight division, while Evander made his debut at cruiserweight. 11-0 was a milestone for both fighters. For Evander, it meant being rushed into title shot with the understanding that Holyfield couldn't stay at 190 forever. He was gaining muscle by the day, and if he wanted the title there, it would have to be soon. So Holyfield took a veteran champion in Dwight Muhammad Kari. Kari stood 5'6", learned how to fight in prison, and brought an endless intensity to every fight.
He's expended a lot of energy.
Every second of the fight was Evander spamming combinations in a desperate bid to keep Dwight at bay. It was the last great 15-round fight, and when the cards are read, Evander Holyfield was the new cruiserweight champion. Meanwhile, for Mike, 11-0 was the final time he would have Customato in his corner. Responsibility for Tyson training was transferred to Kevin Rooney. It was under Rooney in less than 2 years as a pro, that Mike would win his first championship as well. Mike, however, didn't need to go the distance like Evander did. He simply punched a hole in any heavyweight in front of him, including knocking WBC champion Trevor Berbick down 3 times with a single left hook to win his first title.
That was a right to the body and an uppercut to the head, and Berbick is down.
From there, it felt like only a matter of time before Mike would unify the titles. The lineal champion is the man who beat the man all the way back to the beginning. At this time, Michael Spinks was that man. The former light heavyweight was the first to go up in weight and beat a heavyweight champ. Spinks barely made the weight limit, which helped him win the title against a stick-and-move fighter in Larry Holmes. But against a monster like Tyson,
We expected, and Spinks ready to mix it up with him. Tyson along the ropes doing damage.
Spinks knew he didn't have the heavy artillery to keep him at bay. You can see it in his face. Spinks was here for a payday. It took about 90 seconds for Tyson to lift the light heavyweight off his feet with an uppercut. If only Cuss were here to see it. While Mike ruled the world, Evander was just beginning to make his mark as heavyweight. He passed the early test, though not without some hardship. Fighting his way into contention for the heavyweight title, Mike looks unstoppable, detonating jaw after jaw in mere minutes even as champion. He's the biggest star on planet Earth. Mike Tyson was the emperor of masculinity. He was a 22-year-old street kid from Brooklyn, and every human he met had an intense interest in him and an agenda upon meeting him. When Don King fired Kevin Rooney as head trainer, it let the leash off Mike Tyson. La Vida Loca finally caught up to Tyson in Tokyo. There were active negotiations between Tyson and Holyfield for a title shot, but Mike just had to handle some business with a 40-1 underdog named James Buster Douglas. Douglas was a long-time contender, never able to win the big one. The fight was really the tale of two camps. Tyson barely trained and reportedly had been awake for 2 nights partying before the fight, while Buster lost his mom in training, and rather than truly grieve, he hit the gym like never before. For 1 night only, Buster Douglas fought like one of the greatest heavyweights who ever lived. He ate a full-on uppercut and got off the floor to do the impossible and knock out Mike Tyson. Soon after, Tyson was convicted of rape and went to prison. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, all that grief Buster used as fuel for the flame against Tyson had burnt itself out by the time of his first title defense. When Buster Douglas came in to fight Evander Holyfield, he was nearly 20 pounds heavier than he was in Tokyo. He committed the cardinal sin of uppercutting at long range. Evander took his heavyweight title on a single right hand. While Mike sat in a cell, Evander defended his title against giants. He got into wars with far larger men. It was against old George Foreman that Evander proved he could hang with the big boys. Foreman might have been in his late 30s, but he was a vicious clubbing puncher who had juggernaut-level durability. Evander bounced hook after hook off Big George, but couldn't stop the old man coming forward. It was a win-win. While Evander kept his championship, the world had a whole new respect for old George Foreman. But it was over the course of his trilogy, with the 6'5" Riddick Bowe, that Holyfield learned the importance of size. Bowe was a big man, with a shredding inside game. When Holyfield got close, Bowe bullied the blown-up cruiserweight. When the going got tough, Holyfield got dirty. But the bottom line of the first fight was 204 pounds was just too small to tangle with a big man like Riddick Bowe. By the time of the final fight, Holyfield had grown into his heavyweight body completely. He put on 10 pounds of diamond-shredded muscle, and despite horrible pre-fight health issues, Holyfield was able to put on a 3rd straight Fight of the Year caliber performance against Riddick Bowe. While Holyfield endured his trials and tribulations in the land of the giants, Mike was released from prison, and he picked up where he left off, knocked out 4 men, and captured the WBC championship of Frank Bruno in 3 violent rounds. And so negotiations began again. Finally, November the 9th, 1996, the negotiations finally came to fruition. From the opening bell, it was sublime violence. Mike threw a right hand that called the warrior out of Evander.
Quick right by Tyson. Tyson there with the crowd behind Holyfield.
Able to do it. It might be something different.
And the pair gave the crowd exactly what it wanted from the opening bell. While Mike was ripping away with power shot, Evander was refusing to be bullied by Mike. It also took no time at all for both men to get dirty. It was a fight full of low blows and elbows and headbutts. It grew into a gritty war, with Evander's volume getting the better of Mike's precise power. When Mike tried to close the gap, Evander would sink his stance low behind the top of his head, and Mike ran straight into the top of it. It opened up gruesome cuts and an increasingly angry and tired Mike Tyson. It took a demolition job, but finally, the fight was called off in the 11th. The fight was named Fight and Upset of the Year by Ring Magazine in 1996. The rematch was made as fast as possible. Tyson's team objected to the referee in the first fight and was replaced by the veteran Mills Lane. Holyfield didn't care who the referee was. The rematch was held in the summer of '97. Each man was guaranteed at least $30 million apiece. And the second time around, it couldn't have gone any worse. From the first round, you see the same bad intentions in every punch, and the same dirty tactics in almost every exchange.
Tyson with a left hook to the head of Holyfield.
He hurt Mike really good with that right hand.
As Tyson came in with a hook, Holyfield ducked that dome down into Tyson's eyebrow, ripping another giant cut. Mills Lane ruled it unintentional, and Tyson no longer believes the rules exist. Before long, they come together in a clinch. Mike drops his mouthpiece out, takes a chomp at Holyfield's ear, and spits out the piece he bites off.
What happened here?
Holyfield hops around in a righteous fury as Mills Lane tries to figure out what the hell just happened.
Biting Holyfield in the right ear. What a reaction.
When the missing piece of ear starts streaming blood, Mills Lane takes 2 points and inexplicably allows the fight to continue. Holyfield immediately responds with a headbutt and Mike bites him a second time. When the round comes to a close, Mills Lane disqualifies Tyson. He promptly loses his mind and just starts swinging. As the terrified and underpaid security is deployed into the ring, I bet they were glad they wore brown uniforms that night. Holyfield left the ring bizarrely triumphant for a man who had just had a body part scooped into a cooler 10 minutes before, while Tyson leaves in a wake of chaos that would come to be his calling card. The reason Mike Tyson bit Holyfield is simple as this. Mike Tyson hated with every fiber of his being to lose.